Good evening. Tonight's Planning Commission meeting is called to order. Don, would you please do roll call?
Yes. Ms. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Finnerty? Here. Mr. Fahey?
Here.
Mr. Chairman?
Here. Don, do we have minutes from our last meeting?
We do not.
Okay. Could you make it a priority for our next meeting to make sure we have, I believe we need minutes.
We're going to try. Hopefully, we're going to have some new staff by then, so,
That's good to hear.
yes.
All right, on to old business. First item on the agenda is the review of final land development plan by Electric City Development LLC for the conversion of existing structure at 1100 Penn Ave, 315 Poplar Street into 24 apartments. Looks like we have someone here to tell us a little bit about it. The floor is all yours.
Yes. I'm Jude Caldwell, engineer working on behalf of Electric City Development. My apologies, I could not make the meeting last month, but I'm here to answer any questions that may have arisen at the meeting. I understand there were some questions about the landscape plan and perhaps the sidewalks. I did bring with me several copies of both the site layout and the landscape plan, if anyone would like to look. I guess it's right behind me on the wall as well.
Yeah, I don't know if, I couldn't find a landscape plan in my set, so I don't know if,
Well, I do have it right here.
okay.
If you have that, maybe we can just take a look at it then.
Excuse me?
If you have the landscape plan, you could just bring it up. We could take a peek at it. So you haven't seen that yet, Don?
I couldn't find it in my packet.
Okay.
Added a planting strip along Poplar.
So the comment was there's a paved area set back, so we have to add this planting strip in between where the parking area is and the sidewalk. So this 5-foot strip right here is part of the landscape. That we refer to as this 5-foot strip in between parking.
Okay.
So what happens on this side? There's a sidewalk. What's happening here?
Looks like sidewalk, but we've got some plants over that too, so.
You know, the plan on the, plan out there used to be a previous version. And those plans may just be depicted a little bit further, too close to the sidewalk. But that comment was addressed, and this will give you a better picture of where the sidewalk. This is the site layout plan showing current plan set as reviewed by the lab. So this is our sidewalk right here.
So this is the double line, or is that a wall, or how do we?
This is the sidewalk. Right here.
Yeah, I think there was a question about ADA ramps here. So is this, so this is presumably a curb.
It's curved and there are ADA ramps at every interface where the curve, where it meets the curve.
Okay.
We have 4 total
I see that.
ADA ramps.
Yep.
So, and it calls out a type 4 here.
Excellent. Okay.
So that's really the only place we could put the sidewalk based upon the wide utility poles and also the 5-foot paved area setback. So we're pretty well shoehorned in there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's behind utility poles,
Correct. Correct. So there's a 5 or 6 foot strip of plant of grass and plantings where the utility poles sit, 5 feet
So this is part of this property.
It's part of the property, but the plan for this is to be determined.
Tom, Don, did you have anything you wanted to add? Any comments you wanted to make about this?
I believe they've addressed all the comments we had.
Yeah, we got 21 comments, all of them have been addressed, including, adding planting strips and trees.
All right, I guess I'll put my microphone on so everybody can hear it. But what do people think about the sort of the sidewalk just sort of stopping at the edge of this development, but not continuing to the end of the property line?
It seems that because this is all part of the same property parcel, that the sidewalk should continue to the intersection at Poplar and Penn Ave.
So this is just sidewalk, so it's park.
That's more or less that road. So we didn't want to touch anything here because this is not being not being so that's a plan. And so what is it? So the thought is that we will address the building or
So the project being developed is the conversion of 315 Poplar, correct? Which they did have on sidewalks in front of it. And then what is the accessibility? Don, can you bring up the street view of that lot?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's just a parking lot. It's just like asphalt paving that goes from Penn Avenue, all the way down to, yeah, so there you go.
Yeah, part of that's concrete, it was just,
Mhm.
Right. This site plan does not show those parking spaces. So those are, parking spaces are to remain?
Parking spaces in front of the existing building.
Right.
You said that building's unoccupied right now.
We might, I shouldn't speak on behalf of the developer, or maybe somebody in the very front unit.
Okay.
I'm really not sure that the vast majority of it is.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like there's a new-looking sign on the front door there, like Lavelle and Associates or something back. Oh, wait, you can see it? Oh, there you go, yeah, Lavelle Strategy Group.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at it, I think I tend to agree. Ideally, you'd have sidewalks continuing or across the front of 1100 Penn Ave, that building. But kind of looking at the conditions there, I'm not too concerned about accessibility. There is a place to walk. There's some parking there, obviously. I'd imagine it'd be a little bit of an ordeal too, since it's at a different grade, to kind of raise that up to the level of the sidewalk. So,
And it looks like we're headed straight for that fire hydrant.
and also knowing that might be the site of some renovations in the future when that could be taken care of.
what if we delineated that sidewalk area there with some striping for the time being? I mean, it looks like it's passable. It's blacktop up about halfway and concrete about halfway.
So halfway it's got sidewalk with asphalt sealer on top of it.
Right.
It's just straight asphalt.
Out Yeah, it looks like right out to the end of the steps, it looks like it's concrete.
So it's fairly accessible out to that corner.
Right. So can we make a recommendation then that that just be striped to
Absolutely.
indicate that that's pedestrian?
Joe, would you speak from the microphone, just so we could get it on the...
Sorry. I would just like to ask that the Planning Commission hopefully vote to approve, just contingent upon us adding the line striping for the sidewalk.
So I could make a motion that we recommend final approval of the plan, or that with the recommendation that sidewalk striping be added to the portion of the property that runs to the intersection of Penn Avenue and Poplar Street.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Nice.
Okay,
Any
well,
other questions about this? Go ahead, Don.
I was just going to say, just to note, it wouldn't be a recommendation. You're actually making...
We're making
You're
the
making the
motion to
approval.
approve the plan
Yeah.
with the recommendation
Yeah.
that the sidewalk.
The requirement, I guess.
You can make that a condition. It doesn't even have to be a recommendation. Yeah.
So I'll amend the motion to include the requirement
Yeah.
that the sidewalk striping be added.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay. Other questions from the commission? All right, Don, you can go ahead and do roll call.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Finnerty?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It looks like we struck the review of the final land development plan for Yeshiva Beth Moshe School.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
correct?
they contacted us yesterday or the day before. They're not ready yet. They're still trying to fine tune some of their stormwater
Okay,
designs.
that's probably prudent. I noticed quite a few unaddressed comments still, so.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a look at that next month. Moving on to new business, we have first review of final land development plan by NDA Moosic LLC for a major convenience store, Wawa, at 1130 Moosic Street. Do we have someone here tonight to discuss that project?
I think actually we have a few people here this evening to discuss the project, but my name is Sarah Lloyd. I'm an attorney with Cognetti and Samini. I'm so happy to finally be here representing NDA Moosic, who all of our team are very excited to give you some information about this plan. It's been in the works for quite some time, so I will begin by at least introducing some of the members of our team who are going to talk to you tonight. First, there's Mark Newman. He is from NDA Moosic. We also have Joshua Seawald from Dynamic Engineering, who can give you some of the more specific technical aspects of the plan. And we also have Corey from Dynamic Engineering as well. But I think initially, Mark would like to tell you a little bit about the plan, how it was crafted, how we think it can benefit specifically this area.
Great.
Good evening. My name is Mark Newman. As Sarah said, I'm with NDA Moosic LLC. It's a pleasure to be here. We appreciate the opportunity. As Sarah has mentioned, we've been working on this for quite some time. We believe that the plan we've come up with cleans up a blighted area and will help improve not only this site, but the overall area. So we've paid attention to comments, and we've looked strongly and closely, I should say, at some of the recommendations, and we've tried to incorporate everything we can into the plan to be a good partner in this. Our group's been in the development business for a long time. We, I believe, have a very good reputation and always stand by our word on what we do. And again, we really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think we are anxious to get started. We have a client that is committed to the area and really wants to be here. And of course, I think Dynamic will present different things about the site, which will hopefully answer your questions, and you may have more as we go, but we're prepared to do that. But we're very committed, and we thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
You don't need a separate introduction, right?
No, that's okay.
This is, we'll introduce yourself.
Certainly. Good evening. My name is Josh Seawald. I'm from Dynamic Engineering Consultants. We're the civil site engineer who prepared the drawings that are located behind me. I do have a few other exhibits and renderings. We actually rendered the site plan that's located behind you, and we do have architectural elevations too of the proposed Wawa. So at any point in time, after my brief introduction and testimony, if you would like to see those, I'd be happy to mount them on the board or pass them out for you to review. So overall, the exhibit that you have behind me is the site plan associated with the proposed Wawa development. The Wawa here will be 6,049 square feet. We'll have 6 pumps located along Moosic Street. That Wawa will have 82 parking spaces and all other associated features such as a trash enclosure, a loading zone, and some other items for it to function properly. As you make your way from Moosic Street out of the right in, right out, and left in driveway, you'll be making your way through the overall development of the Wawa. And then as you continue to further travel south, you'll have that 30-foot driveway that wraps around and heads over to Meadow. In conjunction with the general Wawa development plan, there's been a lot of efforts over this past year working with the ARC facility located on Meadow. If you take a look at the existing aerial, there's a portion of the building that's actually attached to the ARC building. So as you see on the site plan located along Meadow, what we're doing here is we're proposing a right-in driveway right next to the ARC building and working with your professionals the past few months and essentially reconfiguring the parking area and taking down the former bank, which is now an insurance company that's inside of it. So overall, some major improvements are coming to the ARC parking lot and circulation. With that comes a more modern driveway located on Meadow. Right now, Meadow has one driveway for our property and then a bifurcated driveway for the former banquet drive-through. So we're taking essentially 3 curb cuts, consolidating it, and making a more modern and uniform driveway with nice open radii. So overall, that's a very quick high-level summary of the single site plan sheet. I do have a ton of notes here if you guys have any questions about utilities, stormwater management, lighting, landscaping, operations for the Wawa. I'm here to answer any of those questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Don, am I correct, you recently met with the developers too? I know there were kind of a number of things we had discussed at the last meeting that I think you were going to review with them. Any update on that?
The letter that you have in your packet is dated July 20th, so that would have been the most up-to-date review letter. We've had a couple meetings with them going over some of the individual comments. So I think the letter itself is probably the best guideline to be followed.
And I'm happy to report that I believe that we have satisfied all of Riley's comments and incorporated all their comments. We do have 3 waivers, which we'll get to shortly, about the request tied to final land development, but I believe everything within Riley's review letter has been addressed. And happy to comply with any remaining, we'll call administrative items that would come post-approval from this board.
Okay. I know one of the items that's included in the letter is sidewalks. I don't think I saw those in the plans that we saw here.
Right, that was a new comment, and it was a reference to, discussion that started about various pending applications before this board, and the ordinance requirements requiring basically to put in sidewalks if there's unless we can determine that there is, no purpose to the sidewalk. If there's a purpose to a sidewalk, either currently for access or anticipated, then the request is that there be sidewalks along the frontage of the property. Like we have some rural locations where there are ditches along the road, and no sidewalks would be ever anticipated. But then in, call it a more city street situation, where we have some sidewalks but some gaps, the request is to add sidewalks along the frontage.
Okay. And is that something you plan to do?
Happy to do so. Just for full transparency, we did not have them on the plans the last few revisions because this part of Moosic Street goes underneath I-81, so there's nothing on the other side. That was the pure and only reason why it wasn't there, but once it was requested by your professionals, we were happy to say yes. So it's not on the site plan, but you can condition it to the final land development that will be included in the approval.
Great. Could I ask about the sidewalks up on Meadow Avenue as well? I know there's some existing sidewalks. It was a little unclear looking at the site plan there exactly what the sidewalks would end up looking like.
So there is a sidewalk in front of, we'll call that former banquet drive-through, that's now the insurance company. In redoing that frontage, right, we're bringing down the banquet drive-through building. We're consolidating those 3 driveways into one driveway. So any gaps or openings between the sidewalk will be installed with brand-new sidewalk. But if there is anything that's salvageable, that'll remain as well. So continuous sidewalk along the Meadow, and then as well as sidewalk along our frontage from Moosic Street.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, if I could continue that discussion then. So you've been in discussions with ARC about reconfiguring their parking situation?
Very much so, sir. And as part of our land development plans, there's actually a little bit of a land swap. So the application includes their property and our property. So we're doing a little bit of land swap, and in accordance with that, the demolition plans show a removal of that bank building as well as a portion of our building that touches the ARC building. And then over the last few months, we've been working with your professionals that we will be proposing a right-in driveway off of Meadow to wrap around the ARC facility and formalize and traditionalize a parking lot for them. So going from approximately 25 spaces for the ARC building and going up to 65 spaces. And that's associated with the land swap and getting rid of the bank building.
Okay.
Will those 65 spaces be dedicated to the ARC or they're shared with?
65 goes to the ARC, and we have our own 82.
Can you show us on the plan where those 65 spaces are?
Certainly.
So the driveways aren't connected except that they have a shared entrance on Meadow Avenue.
That's correct.
Okay. And the spaces currently bordering Meadow Avenue for the ARC are to remain there?
Yes.
So with the additional parking that they're gaining, there's no way to eliminate those parking spaces at the front? Because that's a little bit of a hazardous situation.
In working with your professionals the last few months and bringing the ARC operations people into the discussion, they advised that those upfront spaces as well as the loading drop-off area is critical to their current operation. So one of the items that we worked out with your professionals was to eliminate what was actually a right-out driveway and convert it to a right-in so that the circulation is more focused internal instead of external, but they would like to keep those few spaces up front due to the existing operations. And just some further background, if anyone is unaware of the ARC, it is for disabled children and adults. Some of them have physical disabilities, so they like to park up front and come right into the front of the building. The other thing we looked at across Meadow was that our neighboring uses across the street, the Aramark building and a couple of those, have similar parking situations. So I do agree with you, in a traditional commercial sense, we wouldn't recommend it as an engineer, but because it's a ARC facility and those spaces are not high turnover, it's really just for drop off and pickup of those individuals who are there for the entire day. We don't think there's a major detriment to that. So we would like to keep it as is. And then, like you said, there will be a major improvement so we can get the rest of those parking spaces filled around the ARC facility.
Okay. I've driven by that facility recently, and there do seem to be cars parked there kind of throughout the day.
There are parking spaces, yes,
Yeah,
up front.
okay.
Did I see a comment in the letter about recommending that those be turned into parallel parking spots? Or am I making that up?
There are parallel parking spaces on the northern side of the building. Thank you, Lauren. And as well as, if you take a look to the right, where the number 4 is, that is where the parallel spaces are being proposed. So in existing conditions where those 4 spaces are and the one-way drive aisle, there's actually a building there today associated with the property. That's coming down to provide full circulation around the ARC facility.
Do the street view.
So there's going to be, so the existing spaces would stay there, which
Along
you
Meadow.
pull into and you back out into the street, and then additional parallel parking spaces are going to be added. Is that correct?
The parallel will be internal on-site, we're not modifying anything along the Meadow frontage.
So where that garage door is on the left, that's being demolished.
That is coming down.
And that's then a right-in only.
Correct.
Okay. So all the existing
And then-
parking
and
that
then
we see
there's a
there would
space
stay.
that where that white car is now, that space is being eliminated.
Correct. Thank you.
And so with additional parking out back, there's less of a need for parking in front for ARC. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's an improvement to the operations and facility. However, I'll call them the co-applicant for this, we're pretty dead fast that they would like to keep those few up front because of the nature of the people that come to that facility. They are hopeful that there will be less turnover. Their employees can park in the back 65 spaces, but just for those critical people that come up front that have some physical disabilities, they'd like to have those few spaces.
Right, so I can understand the need for drop-off and pickup at that spot, but for having cars there all day, blocking what could be a potential sidewalk that continues what's at the bank and takes you all the way to the corner and provides access to to the store. If there are cars that are parked there, that interrupts the possibility of a sidewalk. So I guess part of what I'm saying is that maybe there could be a couple of spots for drop-off and pickup, but for that situation where there is, as it exists right now, it doesn't allow for a sidewalk.
Correct. And if you look at page 10 of 13 of the comments, number 11 does say the existing parking stalls located on Meadow Avenue in front of the existing office building must be removed. Parallel parking or pull-off area would be considered acceptable if desired. Provide a 5-foot minimum concrete sidewalk along the site frontage on Meadow Avenue. The response was that the comment would be addressed pursuant to the meeting between the applicant and their representatives in the city and their representatives on May 18th, 2023. So I guess we would like more details on the outcome of that conversation, which is that it's going to remain as it is?
Correct. So again, my applicant, NDA, they don't own our property. They're part of this application because of the redevelopment, mostly starting from the ARC at an access easement to get to the property that the Wawa's on and share the full movement driveway on Meadow. So we are limited in what we can say yes to, and what we want to try to do is make as many improvements as possible and address the concerns of the board. But I do not have, my client does not have full right to kind of redo the front of the ARC facility. And if Mr. King, if you wouldn't mind bringing back up the site plan, the parking that's there and where you're talking about a sidewalk, the right-of-way line is actually pretty close to our building. So this is not a situation like the proposed Wawa that can be set back from the right-of-way line, and we can make room for grass, grading, and sidewalks. The existing condition located within Meadow is mirrored also across the street with that Aramark facility. So if you take a look at that site plan, you're talking about 8 parking spaces up along the front, and then a little bit of a loading and unloading area, which is, thank you very much, Corey. So you have 8 spaces, which today there's about 10. We're dropping it down to 8 in order to do that right-in driveway. Again, it's my professional opinion that you have 65 spaces now associated with the ARC. Today they have 25. Their building's not getting any bigger. They are simply looking to provide a better parking lot so that their employees don't have to park off-site or park around the neighborhood. the point of the redevelopment and working with ARC was so that there is less activity up on Meadow. But they were very strong asking to keep those 8 spaces. We can even potentially add some signage that says, no employee parking here, or maybe possibly some drop-off signage, but the elimination of those 8 was asked very specific by that operator to leave them as is. They claim it's very critical for their project. Again, we're driving the bus here for the Wawa and making sure we comply with the brand new ground-up development, but there is somewhat of an existing nature to this ARC facility, the building, their operation, and they are limiting us on what we can and cannot improve upon.
So Don and Tom, presumably ARC was involved in that last discussion.
Yeah,
So
Yes.
that's right. And so basically, the conversation that we had was, about ARC's operation. And the previous version of the plan had an out-only driveway on that northerly or right side of the site. And that's a change from the existing situation that caused what we thought were a number of different conflicts. One is the parking would block the sight distance looking to the left of that exiting driveway, and that exiting driveway would would be coming out in the middle of a turning lane and near other driveways. So there were a lot of reasons from a that driveway configuration we think didn't work.
Right, but so it's changed now.
Right, so then since we're, the alternative of in only does not, and eliminating the parking spaces that are closest to that in only, then it resulted in a situation where there's no reduction in the current safety situation with the frontage of ARC. And ARC, requested that they keep their current, basically they said, we're not changing our operation and we need these spaces. So that was part of the discussion between the developer and ARC and Don and myself.
was it suggested that they convert those spaces into parallel parking spaces instead? I mean, it would seem to me, you could relatively easily turn that into, a situation where cars, if it's for drop-off primarily, would be pulling in, kind of parallel parking with the building, and then pulling out, I think, a little more safely onto Meadow Ave. I think the concern from our commission is, pedestrian safety, one, making sure that there's room for pedestrians to walk, and two, I think eliminating cars backing out onto Meadow Avenue. So I can understand the need to have
So
the drop-off
right.
space.
Yeah, so I guess you're saying is.
I just wonder if the parking spaces could be reconfigured a little bit.
Since they're doing a major project, is there opportunity to improve on the current status
Yes.
quo?
Yeah,
As opposed to just not making things worse?
right, yes, that would be ideal, yeah. Make them better.
And that was part of the discussion we had, and ARC's answer was that, no, we can't do that. So that would probably eliminate, if you made them parallel, you'd eliminate probably half of the spaces that are there. So their answer was no, they didn't want to do that. And that property is outside the scope of this project. It's a separate property owned by a separate person. I think when these 65 spaces are created, that we could probably go back to them and say, well, now when it's one thing looking at them on paper, it's another thing when they're actually there. And they may find when that parking lot is developed and the other spaces they have around the side and the back of the building, that hopefully they'll find that they don't need those ones out front as much.
Right, but we'll have missed then our opportunity to improve the safety situation. So there's something that's confusing me there. Like I don't, for ARC's employees that are parking there, they have to back off. They have to either get in or back out in a very dangerous intersection, you know, just like across the street. And we want to, if there's an opportunity to eliminate that for them and then also improve pedestrian access, I think like this is our opportunity.
So let me provide, if it's okay, Mr. King, two things. I think we can maybe throw some signage up front for those 8 spaces so that it's not free will of who comes there and who doesn't. We can say no employees there. We could, you know, advise employees must be in the back 65 spaces. We can sign it that says only our, they don't call them residents, but only their people that they take care for can park up here. Someone who's dropping them off, or maybe it's a manager coming by, or someone who's to pick up someone who's sick. They like those front 8 spaces not for their employees. They don't want them there for high turnover reasons. So I think with the redevelopment, you are still getting an improvement to the center. The other thing I'd like the board to focus on is there are multiple curb cuts and openness along Meadow. With the addition of the Wawa, you are now restricting those multiple curb cuts and funneling all traffic to one uniform point on Meadow. That improves pedestrian safety because now they only have to cross over one open driveway instead of what is currently right now 3, where there's no radii, it's just open pavement. I certainly agree with you, sir, that there still will be some open pavement in front of the ARC building, just like it is out there today. With the right-in only driveway that's coming around the building, you now get also a concrete curb island that juts out right up to the right-of-way line, which then further delineates a car traveling northbound on Meadow to stay in their right-of-way. So I hope the board can see from the site plan behind me, as well as some of the testimony given so far, that it is still a major improvement to not just the existing facility, but also to the pedestrian safety. The other aspect of pedestrian safety means you don't necessarily have to have a full pedestrian sidewalk along every single street. In some more, as you guys know, urban environments, historical areas where buildings have been here for decades, sometimes pedestrian walkways can be going on each side of the street. So this building, today's day and age, would never be allowed to be this close to the property line. And so because of that and that existing historical condition, it would be negatively impacting the ARC facility that really has just been standing there for quite some time. So I believe that with the addition of the Wawa development and the redevelopment around the ARC, you are making it safer for pedestrians. So before, if you take a look at the south side of the short wall of the ARC building, there is now sidewalk along that building with upfront parking. So it is our hope that not just employees, but their residents can come around and then park there and walk on the sidewalk next to that building. So I still believe that the plan shows a significant improvement in total pedestrian. It's not the perfect picture, absolutely, I don't want to say it is, but with the redevelopment of this parcel with the Wawa and in the combination of the ARC, it's still a major improvement. The initial plan, the Rev Zero plan, had very little improvements at all to the ARC. We essentially were just sharing a driveway out to Meadow. So I think over the past year, I was here last year in June at the zoning hearing board, there's been major improvements, also working with your professionals to get to where we are tonight. So I certainly don't disagree with you. I believe that there could be further improvements should we be knocking down the ARC building and pulling it back from the road. But that's not the application. The application is taking what I have up front and trying to make all of it around as best as I can. I think we've done that on 3 of the 4 sides of the building that's existing today.
So if you pull the plan out, if you could pan out. So we talk about, well, like, what are what are going to be pedestrian movements that are related to the Wawa, and how are they accommodated? And so, so if you go to, because people will walk to the Wawa from neighborhood. So Don, if you could go to the Google map overhead view, just wondering if there's any, so if you pan out farther, so you're not, so you're not walking to the Wawa from the east, because that's 81. So, but you, so it's sort of similar to like, why isn't, even though it'd be nice to have more pedestrian facilities parallel with Meadow Avenue, why isn't a big deal that they aren't there, even though we have a lot of retail? And I think the reason is that the people who are walking to those establishments are from Southside have sidewalks on the various streets that are perpendicular to Meadow Avenue. So when you look at the big picture, if you live in a neighborhood over there behind the shopping center and you're going to walk to Wawa, how are you going to do it? And so that's why I'm wondering if we really, if what you really need is a pedestrian accommodation on the Meadow Avenue main, full access driveway. Because if you walk up one, if you live in that neighborhood, so if you live in that neighborhood, you can walk to Garrity's without walking on Meadow Avenue. You can walk to the liquor store, the pizza place, without walking on Meadow Avenue. But if you're going to walk from that neighborhood to get something at Wawa, and you don't want people walking on the street, you're going to walk up.
No, so they'll be making their way down to
Down River
Moosic
Street.
and then crossing there.
So
I'm
you're-
actually more concerned about people from the hotel. I think what the sidewalk we're talking about is really people coming from the Sheraton.
From the hotel and from East Mountain that come across the bridge on River Street and make a right
So that's
onto
true,
Meadow
yeah.
Avenue.
Right, so should there be sidewalk, so first, I guess the point I was getting to, which then could get extended by Gus, is should there be pedestrian accommodations on the, call it the main driveway off of Meadow Avenue?
So while your professional was talking, my traffic engineer and I were discussing that it could be accommodated to provide a pedestrian walkway from Meadow through the new parking lot where the previous bank building was, and make its way up through the drive aisle of the Wawa to get you then along the drive aisle, so it'll be out of the drive aisle, and to get you towards the loading area right where the front of the building would be. So that way, if you have anyone coming from the hotel or anyone walking on Meadow that wants to walk into the site. Thank you, Mr. Chase. So I do have some grading and things that I'll have to work out with
Okay.
Riley, but overall, I believe there is a path that can be provided that would traverse through the arc, using the sidewalk along the arc, crossing over a driveway, and then coming up a Wawa driveway, and then maybe ending the sidewalk around the pump facility that's there. And then you'll just have a nice striped walkway right to the front of the building. And as you heard in the beginning of the evening, we are going to be providing sidewalk along Moosic. So it's not necessarily a separate concrete sidewalk all the way. A lot of it might just be striped crosswalks, but at least that allows some pedestrian-friendly access from a public right-of-way into the Wawa, and then could also take you back out to Moosic. So that could keep ARC facilities operating in the capacity that they're looking for, because they're existing tenant and owner. And then at the same time, we could address the concern of the board of always improving the pedestrian area of the city of Scranton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that could definitely be an improvement. I understand kind of the peculiar nature of this project where, if you don't own the property, ARC's property, I think that makes it challenging to attach any conditions about that property to this project. Is that kind of what you're trying to point out?
That's exactly what I was trying to point out.
Well,
That's,
Because it's not in the developer's power to make any alterations to the ARC property.
So, right, so if this was just an ARC project, it would, with parking lot modifications, it wouldn't be before the board. You know, there'd be a stormwater management plan approval, but it wouldn't be a land development plan. But as it is an integral part of this Wawa project, it's part of this. So I think that was part of the reasoning in saying, hey, when we're looking at the situation on Meadow Avenue, you know, first of all, don't make it any worse. Don't downgrade the safety at all. But when you look at, you know, the issue of pedestrian safety and Wawa, you know, it's which we look at a lot when we're doing any kind of retail that people are going to walk to. How are they going to get there? Because, you know, you want them to have a safe path.
Yeah, and especially since one of the access is that right after you pass the arc, you know, then having a sidewalk that goes there, like that, to me, seems like it's really something that should be within our purview. Having said that, like, if they've come up with this other alternative to go behind ARC and have, you know, a separate paved walkway that has some sort of a barrier or protection, you know, from the cars that are coming around, I think that could be a good alternative. And in some ways, it's more protected because you're not walking so close to Meadow Avenue. So people coming from East Mountain or people coming from the hotel have this sort of back way pedestrian experience. So while I have the microphone, so we're talking on Moosic Street, when you said there were sidewalks there, you also said something about striping. So there's going to be no place where what could be a potential sidewalk is replaced by just paint, right?
Yeah, so you do have to cross drive aisles, right, to get from Meadow into the Wawa. So, Corey, if you could use your laser, starting from Meadow Street, you go along the sidewalk along the arc, and then you'll have striping to cross a drive aisle, and then we'll come up into landscape, run a sidewalk along the Wawa drive aisle, wrap around the pumps, and then come down. I'll have another striping to get you into the front of the Wawa store.
Right. But I was talking about like sidewalks along Moosic Street.
So we are going to propose sidewalks along Moosic. They're not in the plan right now, but part of the last call that we had with your engineer and Mr. King is that we will provide them within the PennDOT right away.
Okay. All right. But I thought you mentioned something about having striping instead of sidewalks, or is that?
It's because anytime you have to cross an access aisle, right? It's not going to be a race. It's just going to be a delineated crosswalk. It tells pedestrians where to stay in the lane. It also is a delineator for the cars that, hey, someone could be walking in here, slow down, and just a traditional crossing of a drive aisle.
In the driveway. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thanks.
You mentioned that you had renderings of the proposed facility. Could you share those? Unless, are there still additional questions on the site?
If you'd keep the easel kind of behind you there, because that's where the cameras can pick it up.
We have three. It's just a site plan rendering. Same orientation as you see behind you. You have Meadow Ave on the top, Moosic on the right side. Anything green that you see will be future grass and landscaping areas along Meadow Avenue, and the tan light orange color is the existing ARC building, and then the darker orange color is the proposed 6,000 square foot and change Wawa. The skinnier lighter yellow color is the gas canopy associated with the fueling station. So full movement driveway on Meadow, access aisle. We'll come up to the Wawa facility, have approximately 82 parking spaces for them, and then we have a right in, right out, and left in driveway for Moosic Street. The ARC facility, as you can see here, does have a sidewalk that wraps around and comes up front. Those are those 8 spaces we were just discussing of concern. We were discussing how having essentially a walkway coming through the arc on the south side of the building, crossing over, and then in this grass area, we would then provide that sidewalk, wrap around the pumps, and then tie into the front of the building right here. So this is just a site plan rendering to give you an idea. Sometimes it's tough to see the black and white lines and gray areas of a plan, what the overall buildings will be. The next exhibit we have is the actual architectural elevations associated with the Wawa. The top right elevation that will be facing Moosic. The second sign over the back door, because they have a second entrance, it's called the front back building, will be facing the south over the separate parking area. As you can see, it's the same material on all 4 sides, brick at the bottom, parapet and tower-like canopy metal features up there. And then the third rendering we brought this evening is what the canopy will look like, as well as the separate trash enclosure area that's located behind the building. So same thing, you do have various cultured stone at the bottom of the columns of the 6 pumps, and then you have the angled traditional Wawa canopy with some of their logos and, of course, the goose.
Great. Are there other questions, comments from?
Well, on the rendering, can you
Commissioner
show me where the gas pumps are on the first rendering? So anybody walking along Moosic Street will have to be navigating cars that are pulling in and out of there, right? Where would the sidewalks be on?
So this is our access aisle in front of the canopy, and then you have a nice 30 to 40 foot grass island there separating the gas area from Moosic Street. So the only car impact will be associated here at our driveway.
So if you're walking from the corner of Meadow and Moosic Street, where would the sidewalk be? How would you walk into that Wawa?
So our frontage is only here.
Yeah.
We'll have a sidewalk from our property line up to this property line. There will be a striped crosswalk when you cross the driveway, and then we can have an interconnection to get you into the Wawa parking area.
Yeah, because most people are just going to cut right through. They're not going to walk all the way down to the bottom of your picture for.
We agree the request was to provide sidewalk frontage along all of Moosic Street.
Could there be a sidewalk perpendicular to that, just connecting
You're saying from
into the paved area?
down to here?
Yeah, down at kind of the curved corner there.
Yes, with the condition that the connection is bringing you into the Wawa area. That there's not a lot of room between our property line and our neighbor's property line. There's
Yeah.
also a grade differential and a retaining wall
Right.
there. So
Okay,
we can certainly connect to Moosic, but it'll come into
Yeah.
the Wawa.
Okay, where exactly is the retaining wall going to be located?
It is located on the western side property line. It's located behind the existing food market.
Yeah, okay.
So I think there's the potential to tie in that sidewalk that's going behind ARC with the sidewalk that's going along Moosic Street.
There's not a potential for that. You'll have to go through the Wawa parking area in order for a pedestrian to go between each different right away. It's not uncommon to have someone walking, just the same way that you leave the food market, you walk through the access aisle to get to your car. It's the same type of safe maneuvering for a pedestrian access way. That's why we were saying a lot of the areas may just be striped. Think about it like this. You have 6 pumps located in front of the Wawa food market, 12 locations for a car. And a lot of times, the reason why the C-Store food market fueling station brand is successful is you park your car, you start filling it up, and then you leave your car, you walk across the access aisle to get into the building. There's not a separate sidewalk or a striped walkway between there. There's already a natural attenuation between the canopy as well as the food market. In addition, to the back of the Wawa, you have a supplemental parking area. Same thing. People will be walking around the Wawa just using its operation. So in my professional opinion, you don't need a dedicated separate sidewalk between every single point of the right-of-way because of the nature of the use. If this was an industrial facility with tractor trailers backing up, of course we would want a dedicated, raised, protected barrier. But that's not how a Wawa or a gas station operates. There's always pedestrian activity associated with a gas station, the food mart. So we're happy to provide a quick connection from the Moosic sidewalk into the Wawa lot. And then once they're there, you won't be able to tell the difference if their car's fueling, if they're parked having a cigarette outside, or if they're just a pedestrian coming off Moosic to come walk in themselves. It'll be the same type of interaction.
Great. I mean, I for one am pleased with just your flexibility and providing what's probably what is definitely a kind of a difficult situation to work with. There doesn't seem to be maybe an ideal, but I'd be comfortable with the addition of the sidewalk and pathway that we discussed from the Meadow Avenue side down into the Wawa property, and obviously you've already agreed to add the sidewalks on Moosic Street, short connector sidewalk from the Moosic Street sidewalk into the Wawa parking lot, I think is a big improvement, and perhaps the best we're able to do considering some of the other properties
So like
around there.
this example here, the sidewalk from the crosswalk just goes into the
Exactly.
apron area.
Yep, exactly. That looks like a Sheets.
Yeah,
that's
this is Sheets.
Down by the expressway.
The applicant will not allow me to
Yes.
say that word on the record.
But yeah, but the intent of it is just if you didn't do that, the path would be worn
Correct.
in the grass.
Yep.
So it's like when you see a college campus and they have sidewalks crisscrossing here and there.
Everybody walks through the grass straight.
Just the places where the grass gets worn out.
Yeah.
You're still awaiting your NPDES permit?
Yes, we've been through a couple rounds, but that should be wrapped up in the next 30 days.
Okay. When do you intend to start construction with all your approvals in place?
Mark and David would probably tell me tomorrow if they had all things in hand.
Okay. Tom, did you have any additional comments on the stormwater plan, or it's just pending the NPDES?
It's in review.
Approval.
Right?
That's
At
correct.
DEP.
I think we've addressed all of your review letter stormwater comments, and
Yep.
we're waiting on
Yes.
the final technical review from
And so it's
NPDES.
PennDOT and DEP or
Yeah.
stormwater. Right?
They're traditionally a little slower than you guys.
All right, well, I'd be happy to make a motion. This would be for conditional approval, is that correct, Tom? Final approval with,
Right, not recommend, you're making a motion, you would make a motion to approve with the condition that they add sidewalks on the Moosic Street frontage and a sidewalk connection from Meadow Avenue.
Well, is there public comment on, at what point do we take public comment? Is that before a vote? or-
Yes, absolutely.
Right, yeah, you could, right. And so those are the conditions of those two outside permits. And I think you were saying before you entertain that, you wanted to open up for public comment.
sure, yeah. Would anybody like to make a comment?
Just some quick comments. Jamie Hailstone, I represent CF Marts, who owns the gas station contiguous with this property. The HOP, the Highway Occupancy Permit process, is still in process. One of the things that PennDOT is requiring at this point is the potential to having to widen Moosic Street. I think that's important for the board to know because that's going to change a lot of these lines. They need, if they're going to be able to put the center turn lane, PennDOT is expecting them to having to widen that. Also, PennDOT is talking about requiring or having the city sign off on having a center turn lane on Meadow Avenue also. That's something that they were supposed to bring to the city. I don't know if that was brought up or talked about yet, but that's one of the requirements that PennDOT also has with the HOP process, which again is in process, and they've been through a lot of back and forth. I think the most recent comments were from May of this year, but I think that'll probably be more coming up. And I do have a question. On the right turn only lane, is that dedicated only for ARC, or is that going to be for access to your property? I was a little confused.
Certainly. That will be an ARC driveway only. Could you theoretically come in, circulate, and then head back to our way? Yes, but it is meant for the ARC property. It is, as you can see, there's a bold black line. That is a subdivision line, giving ARC their property associated with their right-in and their new parking lot of 65 spaces. But they will, of course, have access to the shared driveway that goes out to Meadow.
And there's curbing between the back of the ARC property and the Wawa property along that line there?
Absolutely.
That's all I have, other than to also point out that the HOP application is for a 6,000-foot gas station and convenience store and a 5,000-foot fast food restaurant. And that's not before you, but that's in their application for the HOP. I'm confused by that also, that they're bringing something to you and something different to the PennDOT. I also have a question about the overall price of the project. I know that's something that's in the record, but I haven't seen it.
I'm just the engineer, so I can't talk about price of the project. But the HOP permit is contemplating a certain number of trips associated with the driveways for future Phase 2. We're not here tonight to discuss Phase 2 because, transparently, we don't have a tenant yet. We have a signed lease with Wawa, who is eager and excited to come to the city of Scranton and come up front. So we are in for final land development before your board, because should you approve the plans that are in front of you, that's what could be constructed. Should at any time the back half, the Phase 2 area, get approved for something with a potential tenant, then we wouldn't have to go back to HOP process. But we would have to come back before your board for that land development phase for Phase 2. Corey, did I miss anything you wanted to add?
Josh is always doing my job. Good evening, everyone. Sir, I'm Corey Chase with Dynamic Traffic, and Mr. Sewell was correct. PennDOT requires us to make a certain assumption when there's a Phase 2 for potential development. They want to limit the amount of times we go through the HOP process as much as possible. So Josh was correct in that we made some assumptions for potential future development. Obviously, that's not before the city. The hope would be is that if there is potentially a Phase 2 development in the future, those trips would fall under what we had assumed as part of our original HOP, and therefore we wouldn't have to go back to PennDOT for any additional permitting. Their preference is not that you install a driveway and then 2 years later you have to rebuild that driveway to do some additional improvements. They really encourage us to do sort of a worst-case scenario assessment and do that as part of the initial HOP application rather than doing it in steps and multiple iterations. And just a point of clarification too, you can actually see on the plans the widening on Moosic Street is shown in the dark area, so that's already contemplated on the plan, so there is still sufficient area between that widened area and the right-of-way line to provide that sidewalk area. So that widening, as was mentioned by the attorney, is actually depicted on the plans currently, so there is still sufficient area to accommodate that sidewalk that was requested earlier this evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
Any other public comment? All right, so I'll make the motion to recommend final approval with the condition of the sidewalk installed on Moosic Street with a connection to the parking lot, as well as the sidewalk and pathway from Meadow Avenue as we discussed it.
And the the issuance of a PennDOT HOP permit and the issuance of a DEP and PDS stormwater permit
Correct.
are also conditions.
Yes. All right, motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All right,
Just one little, a small comment. So if, I'm a little concerned that if you, I'm thinking back the sidewalk that's behind the arc now that's being proposed. If you're replacing a green planting with a sidewalk, then is it still, is there still any barrier? Is there room for a barrier then, green or otherwise, that, that protects pedestrians as they make their way through a car-centric area?
It's the traditional sense of sidewalk, right? Like, so your sidewalk on Meadow Ave is right next to travel public right away. So our sidewalk that will go through this parking area is not going to have a barrier. The nice part is when it is going along the 30-foot drive out, it will be raised above the 6-inch curb. So I never like to call a curb a barrier, because if you hit it hard enough, you can hop it. But I believe that if you were to move over, you would hit the curb and then come back. So the sidewalk that will be along the 30-foot drive aisle will be elevated. But again, once that striping comes into play, you will be at grade level with the ground. But again, the crosswalk is a delineation. It comes from the MUTCD. You have to angle it, and it has to be a certain width of striping and a certain thermoplastic painting to pop, so that anyone driving that area provides a safe and efficient maneuver for pedestrians.
Okay, thanks.
all right. Don, would you do roll call, please?
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Finnerty?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with it.
All right, next up, under new business, review of final land development plan by HAZA Development for the development of a 2,176 square foot Taco Bell fast food restaurant at 733 Davis Street. We have someone here to discuss that project? Yes, sir. Great.
So, is that the Taco?
Good evening. My name is Lindy LaRue. I'm with Milton's Engineering, the representative here tonight for HAZA Bell. Before you, we've proposed a 2,176.5 square feet fast food restaurant. It's located at 733 Davis Street, in an existing plaza in the light industrial zoning district. We have gone through a couple iterations of comments so far with the engineer, the city engineer. I believe we have gotten most of the major comments ironed out. Today we did receive a new letter requesting some sidewalks, which after speaking with the developer today, they are certainly willing to add those additional sidewalks along Davis Street. There was some question if we can bring the aerial photo up of the addition of that sidewalk past what I'll call the industrial building that's on site. So the question that the developer had is certainly sidewalks, on the Davis Street side, where the fast food restaurant is. The question was whether they needed to extend past the industrial existing building that's there. Is that cemetery is, past that building. There's quite a bit of utility that's in the way coming down through there. And then past the cemetery, we have just the entrance to 81.
So if you bring up the street view.
The other side does have full sidewalk. There's no crosswalks that come across. I believe the last sidewalk is the Dunkin' Donuts there, I believe.
Do you have any recommendation on that, Tom?
If you pull up the street view there, it doesn't seem it doesn't seem feasible to fit a sidewalk in.
Yeah, that was one of our concerns, is with the utilities that were there. There wasn't,
You turn, like you rotate more to the right. Like you could obviously fit a sidewalk right there, you know, but you wouldn't, like you start to get into this grading and then there's no sidewalks along Cemetery or along that side of Davis Street heading up until you get to the convenience store. It just it doesn't seem like there's room to fit it. But I think there's definitely value in putting the sidewalk on the west side of the driveway across the front. Yeah.
yes, yep, and the developer, you know, he was aligned to adding that sidewalk with the condition that, you know, he would be able to turn it to go into the proposed sidewalk that he has for the outdoor seating of the Taco Bell,
Yeah.
which would eliminate a lot of cross pedestrian traffic through the entrance of that plaza, as it does get, you know, some traffic usage right now for the grocery store that's in the back. You know, by having that sidewalk turn and come in, it certainly would eliminate any traffic going, you know, to the Taco Bell. And again, we could cross traffic through the sidewalk to get to that grocery store there as well. Now, they are willing to extend the sidewalk up to this entrance if that's a request of the commission.
I think it would be good to have it across the frontage, you know, with a connector that would be pointed at the store, at the restaurant.
So it could kind of curve basically right there where.
Right.
Yeah, bring it to the driveway, you know, and so if you wanted to walk to something that was, you know, in the back of the site, you could walk past the Taco Bell. But then, you know, like you're just saying that you'd have one that was a stub or connector that was pointed at the restaurant.
Yes, if we could bring up the site plan that you had up there before, you may be able to see it a little easier. Yes, if we could, you know, we would request that we could bring the stub, just to connect into the sidewalk that's proposed in front of the Taco Bell now. There is an existing sign there that you see in purple that is being removed. That sign was put up, and the owner of the lot is requesting that to be moved by the tenant right now.
So right now, people walk to the grocery store that's at the end of that site?
So right now, there are no public sidewalks on site whatsoever.
Right.
No crosswalks from the other side. The other side of Davis Street has full sidewalk down the entire frontage, but unfortunately, right now, there is no crosswalk across Davis Street.
Right. I mean, I have to say, I agree with Tom that there's nothing to walk to, you know, after you get to that thing. So unless people are walking to the cemetery, which I don't think anybody does, and then then past that, it really just goes up to Pittston Avenue and then 81.
Yeah, and if they want to walk to the cemetery, there is a sidewalk on the other side of the street that could be utilized. They'll have to cross Davis, but.
Well, I think the sidewalk actually stops directly across there. That's the Dunkin' Donuts.
At the end of Dunkin'. Yeah.
Right.
Is it right there?
which
Okay,
is
so that's where the
Yeah,
sidewalk?
and that's right at the
Okay.
intersection of Cemetery.
Doesn't
You
look like
really
there's
can't cross-
sufficient room either alongside that building to save the
Right,
sidewalk.
right.
with the
Yes, and
utility
directly
poles.
behind that building,
Okay,
the property line ends, and it's actually an older abandoned railroad right-of-way that runs through there, so that's off of the property. So even if we were to put sidewalk there, we'd have to end short of the intersection of Cemetery.
That's
Okay.
this area in here.
Yeah.
Is the railroad.
Yeah.
Well, I think at least providing a new sidewalk across the front of this property along Davis Street improves the situation from what it is now.
but Jen, are you saying like the entire length, or are you just saying to where that sign is, basically?
Yes, up to that driveway entrance.
Right, okay, yeah. So that's where I'm at. But I am wondering whether, so this might be out of the scope of the project, but whether there's a painted sidewalk that sort of takes you across the parking lot and gets you to is that a grocery store or something that's there?
Yes, yep, it's the grocery store in the back. Certainly, the safer route would be to utilize the frontage of the sidewalk of the Taco Bell, as there is parking out front of the Taco Bell. So if we were to wrap this sidewalk around near that stop sign, and someone was to walk straight back from there, they would be walking through the drive aisle, which is why we had talked earlier this afternoon with the developer about stopping the sidewalk short and returning it into the Taco Bell sidewalk. That way they would have to walk in front of all the parking. They would be out of all the drive aisles.
Okay.
Instead of taking the sidewalk all the way to that intersection, we would stop short, turn it in, funnel all traffic through the Taco Bell. It keeps them out of the drive aisles for at least, the bulk of the property.
So are you saying this area here?
Yes, sir.
So if there's a drive-through?
There is a drive-through there, yes.
Okay, and the pickup is, so people come around that corner, and I guess if it's a crosswalk with a stop sign.
Yeah, so all traffic would be stopped at the pickup window in the back, and then we would put a delineated crosswalk through that drive-through exit.
I think a stop sign.
Yes.
There also.
We can certainly add a stop sign. Yeah, what we can do is we can add a painted stop bar on the pavement as well as a stop sign.
Okay.
That way there's not only a physical sign, but a painted visual on the pavement as well.
I think that would be sufficient.
Tom, I noticed quite a few of the stormwater related comments still needed to be addressed. Anything you could say about that?
So they're requesting a waiver from some of the volume control requirements in the ordinance based on the net reduction in impervious area with their proposal. They see, as you can see, like some of the green highlight there. So we're recommending that waiver be approved. And there are some minor comments on some of the stormwater notes that need to be addressed.
Yes, one of the original comments, the way that the ordinance was written, the first comment about the rate control was about sizing the stormwater pipes to the 100-year storm. We responded back to that comment. There's a 15-inch discharge pipe. So right now, the way that the plaza is set up, all the water sheet flows to a ditch, which I'll call the north side of the property, the way that it's facing you. So all the water sheet flows to the north side, funnels down a ditch, and then through a conveyance system that's also there on the north, just south of that yellow water line that you see, and hits the stormwater system through a manhole. What we're proposing to do is capture the water before it hits the new restaurant, place it into catch basins, and tie into the last manhole that's there. That manhole currently has a 15-inch pipe to it. We were asking not to size pipes, but to tie in with a 15-inch pipe as well, knowing that we couldn't put any more water into that system than what the pipe already allows us to do.
And that's a dedicated storm line in Davis Street that you're tying into?
Yes, sir.
And by what percentage are you reducing the impervious coverage that exists now?
I believe we're adding around 2,000 square feet of pervious to the entirety of the site.
And do you have a landscape plan?
We do, yes. Should be Plan LS1.
There we go.
So this plan will be regenerated with that sidewalk as well. We are adding some trees around the outside. We did have to take down a couple trees to fit the project in. However, we are adding, some new trees, some new shrubbery out front, and plantings. We will have plantings and screenings called for around the dumpster enclosure as well. And then the area directly behind and surrounding the dumpster enclosure is all grass, as well as the curb island to the left and right of the drive-through entrance. And I believe that we have added also some pervious area to the left, on the very left side of the drive-through exit.
Up in here.
Yes, that widened out a little bit from the initial.
Other questions, comments from commission members? All right, if there's nothing else, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
We need to vote on the waivers first. So was it 3 waivers that were requested?
I believe there were 3 waivers, yes.
Do you want to do those individually?
Yeah, that's probably the cleanest way. So let's go through. One was for stormwater on the pipe. Oh, so you didn't have to. What were we trying?
Did they write up the waiver requests?
I don't.
Yes, I believe there was a separate page for waiver requests.
Okay.
I believe the first was due to the scale of the plan. It just showed up better as a 1 to 30 scale, just so you could see more detail. So we were asking for a waiver from the subdivision and land development ordinance for that.
Standard. One on
Where's
the
that?
infiltration,
Yes.
One was for volume and rate control,
rate control.
Plans, okay.
and then the third waiver that we had asked for was for the stormwater pipe sizing.
So we have, they're requesting 1, 2, 3, 4 waivers. A waiver for scale, a waiver for stormwater volume controls, and a waiver on conveyance calculations, which, and a waiver on financial security cost estimate. And so we recommend the waivers on the scale and the volume control. We did not recommend the waiver on the conveyance calculations. So what we asked for is calculations. We didn't necessarily ask them to change the design. We asked them to provide calculations and demonstrate what storm events they are handling.
Yes, that comment, I believe, changed from the one before. So this letter is a little different than the last one that we received. The last one was, I believe, asking for us to comply to the saldo, which required the 100-year calculation.
Right. So basically we said, hey.
So this one, we would like to, we certainly can comply and let you know what storm we would be applicable to, as long as we don't have to comply to the 100-year storm, I guess is what our waiver would ask for.
Todd, could we just take these one at a time in order and just?
Pardon? Yeah, so we're asking them to demonstrate what storm they're going to handle. So there's several other conditions on what I would call minor stormwater conditions that we want addressed also.
Okay. Can we go through the waivers one at a time, Tom?
Okay.
Just so we're clear here, and we can we'll entertain motions to approve each of them.
Yeah, let's start with the easy one, the scale. And that's all, that comes up on almost every one. I forget what scale we asked for, but usually they give us a better scale than what we require. It makes it easier to read the.
Scale appropriate to the size of the project, yeah.
I would make a motion that we approve the request for a waiver that appears under A1 subsection D, all right, regarding scale.
Second.
All right. Should we do roll call for this?
I think we could just do,
Just a voice vote?
everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Any opposed?
opposed?
On the scale issue, is it possible to change the city's requirement for the scale, since we have repeated requests for waivers on that?
Yeah, we could amend it in the ordinance, but it's usually not that big of a deal to do the waiver.
Okay.
But certainly next time we,
There's occasionally a project that the scale works for.
yeah.
Right.
Just so
I know.
happy that this was a smaller project, you know, in terms of size, but like Wawa, that was a, you know, a multi-acre project that the 50 scale would have looked
Right.
and did look very nice on it. Just so happened that this is a more of a tinier lot.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, so what they tend to do is smaller projects, they blow it up and you can see more detail.
Yeah, bigger scale, right.
And it's one of those things that it's hard to define because each project is different in terms of, you know, you want to have readable plans.
Okay, so we'll just leave it and
Yeah.
continue to waive that requirement as necessary. Okay.
Okay. So we put that one to a motion, approve that
So
first
just
waiver.
for example would be if someone came in with, let's say, 100 scale plans and you couldn't read any of their text or what they were doing, you couldn't read what the detail they're doing, we would say, hey, here's this 50 scale requirement. You gotta, so it has its purpose.
Yeah, so at a minimum, 1 to
Yeah.
50, and then
Yeah,
can go up from there.
yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Tom. The second waiver requested,
Rate and volume control?
This
Volume?
stormwater control, stormwater management ordinance, section 301 on volume control.
okay, we'll entertain a motion,
What page are we on now?
page 4.
Page 4.
This will be item 1, B1.
Okay.
Everyone see that?
Yeah.
See which one we're referring to?
And this again is one to which there is no objection.
No objection, yeah. So-
Have at it.
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver under item B1, which is waiving, which should the language be there, Tom?
Is it this the stormwater volume?
Yeah.
Waiving the requirement for stormwater volume controls under section 301 of the stormwater management ordinance.
Okay, so moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. And then the third is 2B, is that correct?
All right, so this is a waiver of stormwater ordinance section 305F.1.2, and it's require 100-year capacity for systems not tributary detention systems. The plan proposes pipe sizes meeting the existing pipes at discharge point in Davis Street. And we recommending approval of that, conditioned on them providing calculations describing the storm event, or demonstrating the storm event that will be conveyed.
Okay.
I'm confused. Is this one on the same page, and it is section B, 2B, subsection B, and dealing with...
It's actually B2D, I believe, at the bottom of the page.
Okay, well, what is this one that's talking about a waiver right here?
That was part of the volume waiver that we just approved.
Okay, got it.
So I'll move that we grant a conditional waiver based upon the applicant providing the calculations for the storm this design would relate to.
Correct.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. And then the fourth.
Wait a second, I think that's what we were just talking about here. So B2, I don't think we voted on. B1 we voted on, but not 2B, B2B.
That was my belief, too.
I believe the waiver that we approved for B1 is the same waiver, essentially. The nature of it is the same for the other B2B.
Okay.
Right, yeah, so the
So
waiver,
identical language.
yeah, the language for
Yeah.
the waiver is the same, so that covers both of those.
Sorry, excellent.
Okay. Do we still have one more then, Tom?
Then there's the financial security.
Yeah,
waiver.
the last one would be the posting of financial security, which is normally only done when there's going to be facilities that are given back to the public. If it was a subdivision and they were building streets that would be dedicated back to the city, we would ask for a bond to make sure the streets are built. But in this case, there are no public improvements. Everything is private.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the, to waive the financial security for this project.
Where does that appear, Tom?
Can you tell us where that is, Don?
Should be
Saldo
under, should be
Article
under the
8.
saldo.
Article 8 of the saldo.
I don't see it. Is
I
it?
don't see it in the comments.
I just have a note on it. That
Okay, can we still move to
Yeah,
recommend a waiver? Okay.
yes.
So I'll move to,
You could just second.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I
just
made
a
the motion,
second.
so
Second.
we look for a second now. All right, second. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. That covers it for the waivers.
Yeah, so now we're into the conditional final approval.
All right, we'll entertain a motion. I will make a motion to recommend conditional final approval, and that includes the addition of the sidewalk as discussed along Davis Street, would terminate basically where the sidewalk runs in front of the Taco Bell, and that would include a crossing there with both a crosswalk and stop sign.
I'll second.
In the satisfaction of
I have,
the engineer's comments?
Yes, yes.
so in my list of other outstanding comments, there's the Lackawanna County Planning Commission comment regarding parking use. The adequate parking is provided, but the plan note regarding parking needs to be corrected. So they need to provide a corrected note regarding parking.
Okay.
That's one. Second is they need to provide utility letter regarding communication. Third is on stormwater, they, let me see, they have there's several minor stormwater comments.
I believe the inlet markings, Tom, the location of roof drains.
Correct. Right, so comment 2E, which is inlet markings, 2F, which is the location of the roof drain outlets. And then the last one is the County Conservation District approval of the ENS plan.
Okay. Can we, is there a way to kind of summarize that? Can we say, including, the other, as long as provided the other minor comments?
Well, I think you want to write them down so they're recorded
Sure.
individually, so there's a record so that they can be identified.
So Don, did you write those down?
I have, or sometimes it's easier if we just refer back to the comments that are listed as not addressed in the city engineer's July 25th letter.
Yeah, I think that's what I was getting to, so.
I mean, I could make the request that it would be, pending the satisfaction of the engineer, the city engineer's comment letter.
Yeah, I have a set of notes for those.
Okay. All right, great. We'll add that to the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All right, go ahead, take a roll call on that one, Don.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Finnerty?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. All right, great. Thank you very much.
Hey,
Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, folks. You have a good evening.
Good evening, Matthew.
Thank you.
All right, next item of new business, review of final land development plan by AP Storage LLC for the development of a 7.9 acre self-storage development, the 2600 block of Stafford Avenue. Does not appear we have anybody representing the developer here tonight. Anything, Tom, Don, can tell us about this project?
Well, we'll certainly bring them back, but it's as you can see up on the thing, it's a development of a self-storage buildings. It looks like 7 buildings. This will be on Stafford Avenue between the Pennsylvania American Water Building and the nursing home up at the top of the hill. There's really not a whole lot to these types of development.
So we have one significant stormwater calculations that their stormwater system sizing doesn't work. And they have to get an NPDES permit. So it's kind of not really ready for approval.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't catch the tail end of that, Tom?
So the one stormwater comment is very significant. We have the new sidewalk comment, which, do they need sidewalks or not, which we haven't really discussed, but then we might want to just look at that together so that we can give them guidance.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But the stormwater drainage system shall be designed without surcharging inlets, and which basically they haven't provided. So basically what happens is the pipe capacity is not big enough. So when you route the storm drainage, the water backs up in the inlets, which doesn't meet the code.
Okay.
So
you'd like them to address that before we approve the plan?
that's pretty it's a whole set of piping calculations that need to get redone.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, let's talk about the sidewalks then.
Yeah, can I first note that I think the address is wrong, because it shows that the address is on one side of the street.
So it's on the 81 side of Stafford Avenue.
It's on the 81 side here. And as you can see, this is a road, and there's no walking that's happening here, and there's no retail businesses at all.
No.
There's, across the street, you go down far enough, there's the post office, and then a Econo Lodge.
Right. So,
But at this point, you're a mile away from
right.
significant residential.
Yeah, if you wanted to go to the post office, you'd have to walk in the street. So, or off in the grass somewhere or something. But yeah, so Stafford Avenue in that area, none of Stafford Avenue has sidewalks. So I think they would be, but I think in each of these cases where they don't provide any sidewalks, they should ask for a waiver and with a justification.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with Gus. I don't see a need for sidewalks here.
And also, this use is a storage facility. Nobody's going to be walking to that. You're pulling up your car and your trailer.
Okay. So we'll table that one for tonight. I think you can take that back to when you have discussions with the developer. We don't see a need for sidewalks, so they can put in a waiver for that, and then iron out the permitting issue.
Yeah, see where the blue, I presume that blue arrow, that's where this address actually shows up, but the property's actually across the
Yeah, it's
street,
across
right
the
there.
street.
Yeah.
When they get under construction, we'll issue them an address. I mean, they're really, if there's no building on there, there's technically no address for the
okay.
property. So usually, once they get approval, we'll issue an address, and
Okay.
when we do that, we notify the post office and the county 911, so it's added into both of their databases, and we give them the location of the property. So county 911 drops a pin in their map system, so that if they get a call, their GPS will take them right to the correct property.
Okay.
Don, let me ask you a question. There is no requirement for a representative to actually be present?
Oh, I think we should have somebody here. I wouldn't recommend that we take any kind of
Okay,
any
good.
kind of vote on it tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
And as far as,
But to my point, is that an absolute requirement, or is that just something that typically occurs?
I don't know that it's an absolute requirement. We've approved some minor projects in the past without having a representative here. When it's cut and dry and they've met all the conditions, that would be a different case. But it's always good to hear from the applicant.
Yeah.
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 All right, great. We'll table that one for next month then.
Next month, yes.
That brings us to item 4, review and make recommendation to city administration regarding the downtown Scranton connectivity plan. So this is one, we had this item on the agenda last month as well, so we kind of introduced it at that time, but agreed we'd give everybody another month to make sure they could take a look at, review the plan itself. And I believe there's some interest in providing some sort of formal support, letter of support to the administration, kind of endorsing the downtown Scranton connectivity plan. So I'll leave it at that. Open it up for discussion from anyone here.
I would suggest that perhaps we have a meeting where there's a single item on the agenda, and the item is the discussion and consideration of the connectivity plan. I mean, I've been through it, and I was glad to watch the video presentation of the author of the plan. I thought that was helpful too. But I mean, there's a ton of detail in there, and I think it's deserving of as I said, a single item agenda.
So the conversations we're having with the mayor's office is that there's additional study needed to go forward, and as part both traffic modeling and engineering analysis of different intersections that are recommended to be changed, and that as part of that process, which also relates to some of the streetscape projects that are in the planning phase, there's going to be several public meetings where we're going to make significant outreach to residents and property owners that are affected, and I think it would be good to have a significant role for the Planning Commission to get involved in some of those meetings and get your input and hear from the public, because that's we're going to be reviewing the technical issues with PennDOT, getting their input, and in some of our conversations with PennDOT, they're saying, we'll support you, we'll go through the process with you, and we both, by our internal conversations and our conversations with PennDOT, realize that this will affect a lot of different people who travel through the city, and people who own property in the city, people who walk and bike, and that it's important that everybody understands, what the reasoning is, and that they see the more in-depth analysis, and they get to give their input and how whether they like it, whether they have issues with it, and help shape how this gets implemented. So it's not just going to be a quick recommendation, and then we're going to be issuing construction plans.
No, I understand that, and I would even go a step further and say that not only are the groups and subgroups that you identified as being potentially and actually impacted, I would say that anybody and everybody who's a resident of the city of Scranton or who is even passing through is going to be impacted to one degree or another by that study and the things that it calls for. My thought is this, is that as I have stated previously, I think the Planning Commission is a very logical vehicle, all right, to be proactive in this whole process, number one. And number two, that requires that we have an opportunity to be intimately aware of the details in that and discuss it amongst ourselves. And obviously, at a public meeting, we can't meet without it being public, all right? But you're talking about, I don't know, 160 pages, something like that. I think it would behoove us, all right, to develop that level of intimacy with the report and with the communication we will have back and forth amongst ourselves as a first step. That would be my thought.
Yeah, that seems a reasonable, Jack. I think Tom's suggestion, so sorry, is what Tom suggested kind of in line with what you're thinking? I know he mentioned there are going to be, public meetings and having
Oh, I
our
think there'd
planning
have to-
commission
I think that'd have to
play
be
a role in
a
participating and
Absolutely.
leading those public
Absolutely.
meetings.
Yeah.
Right.
What I'm saying is that I don't think at this point, I wouldn't feel comfortable, even though I've been through it and I've seen the presentation. I want to spend more time, and I want to know what my colleagues on this board, how they, the thoughts they have and the responses they have. I think it would be premature as a body to just say, well, we recommend this and pass on it. I guess that's where I stand on this.
Mm-hmm. You make a good point. Jen, Gus, do you have any thoughts?
I am ready to move on it, but I can also see the idea of us having a common understanding of the documents, so that we don't have sort of any questions like internally. So if what your suggestion is we have an additional meeting that's sort of in between the 30-day meeting?
That'd be fine. Whatever would suit the convenience of the commissioners and the staff.
I would be favor of an interim meeting in order for us to discuss what we've each gleaned from the study, but I do think the public commentary portion is critical to this as well.
No,
Advance
unless
recommendations.
the city can build a consensus for this, it won't happen. So the public thing is essential, absolutely.
Would it make sense to maybe have a caucus before one of our
Yeah, so,
meetings to kind of go through it?
yeah, and maybe even in the interim, if we could set up maybe an online meeting with us, and we can go through some things in the document, along with some other people from the administration.
Tom, that does raise one question, all right? And maybe this is outside of your field of expertise, but Don, maybe you can answer this. What are the rules regarding the sunshine law and Zoom meetings?
My understanding right now is that public meetings are not allowed to be held by Zoom or Teams at this point. They were specifically allowed during the pandemic. The state passed a law that allowed them. So at this point, my understanding is that an online meeting of the commission would not be allowed.
An official meeting couldn't.
An official meeting.
An official, but...
You couldn't have a voting meeting. You couldn't vote on anything.
Right, but my understanding of the sunshine law is no more than two of us can get together for a cup of coffee if we're discussing business. If you had a Zoom meeting, we'd have 5, 6, or 7 of us, and we would be discussing the business of this report.
I think if it's an educational meeting where there's sort
I
of...
would hope
We
could
certainly
do
can
that,
meet
but
in
I just don't
person.
know.
I mean, on that point, I'm certainly pretty tired of online meetings myself. It's the thing about online meetings is that they save you having to get up and take the time before and after the meeting. So sometimes they're more scheduling efficient than in-person meetings, but they're otherwise, a meeting in person when you have the ability to put stuff on the screen, is a better format. So I'm really personally not at all opposed to going over stuff in person.
This would not change what I was basically proposing. One is the substance and the other is the mechanism, all right? As long as the mechanism that we opt for is in fact legal, all right, and is set up in such a way that all commission members are potentially available, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think my understanding is similar to Gus's, that it would require, as long as we're not discussing kind of taking action on something, but receiving information, we could do that. I think before we set up a meeting, that should be easy enough to run by the city's solicitors to make sure that's the case.
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay.
But also having a public meeting would give an opportunity for public to participate.
I think
as
that
well.
needs to follow.
Yeah, we're not, right, yeah, and I think the suggestion was that would follow. Tom has indicated that
I see.
the city is already planning on holding some public meetings. So
Yes,
that would be
yeah,
an
absolutely.
opportunity for
So-
our commission to take a role in that.
And I think what we anticipate is that those public meetings would follow some more investigation of some of the, like, so when they did the study, they did a level of traffic analysis that tested each of the major recommendations, to a level that they would likely be feasible. But they did not take the analysis to the level of proof that you would need to satisfy me or to satisfy PennDOT. And what that means is the next step is taking this traffic model that they have done and the traffic counts and extending them out farther to more intersections where they're, where they'd recommended changes, and doing additional levels of analysis on how intersections are affected by the changes beyond what they already did. And these are sort of standard things that we do in traffic studies. We take these network analysis, a network of intersections connected with segments, and we show the existing and proposed traffic patterns and what the delays are in each segment and each intersection, each turning movement. And they did all those things, but they didn't do it on every intersection they proposed changes. And they also didn't take the model and set up a simulation of the traffic flow, which is really not that difficult once you have the base set up. So the next steps the city is going to do is take and run those additional simulations to test out the assumptions, which basically the biggest test, the biggest change is to change the two sets of one-way couplets to two-way traffic. And they made assumptions on how the traffic would redistribute. And they ran that through the network model. And their conclusions were that they would work without undue delays at the intersections. And they also ran, within that network, they ran the changing some traffic signals to all-way or four-way stops. Those are all, at the level of analysis they did, those also worked. But then there's another level of analysis for the one-way, the two-way change, where we need to add a few more intersections at the edge. So they ran the model basically from with the intersections on Lackawanna Ave, from Jefferson up to Wyoming, on Jefferson up to Mulberry, Wyoming down to Mulberry, and Mulberry up to Jefferson, and then around the courthouse square. So that's the core of it. And then there are additional intersections that are impacted on Penn and Franklin and Mifflin that have to be added to the model, and on Vine, and then where Adams intersects with Washington. So they need to be added to the model. And then the model that's just in this network analysis needs to also be ported into a simulation. And so you look at what the queues are, how far does it back up at each intersection at these peak hours? So you run that in this network analysis, but then you also then run it in the simulation. And you test those assumptions and see if it works. So, and then on this taking out traffic signals, and you look at you look at the numbers, and you also go and you closely look at all the different aspects of the site as far as how pedestrians walk there and what your sight lines are, and those volume warrants, and you run it through the model and you see if it works. So there are intersections that they're recommending to remove traffic signals that need some additional traffic counts and run through those tests. And our recommendation is that those sort of second level of tests of these things get run and reviewed with PennDOT, so that we're not telling the public these are exactly what we're going to try to implement, until we've this next level of, say, proof of engineering analysis. But based on the analysis they did do, the recommendations make traffic sense. There are a lot of things that I'm just talking about the one-way couplets and the all-way stop versus the traffic signals. Where traffic patterns have changed, and I think there's so it's generally thought to be by a lot of different studies that it's safer to not have traffic signals if you don't need them because of the amount of volume of vehicle traffic, because there's more severe pedestrian and vehicle accidents at traffic signals, because cars tend to go, like an example would be someone might roll through a stop sign, but someone either is not paying attention to a light at all or is racing to get through a light, after it changes, which, unfortunately results in call it more severe conflicts, more severe accidents based on a lot of studies. And then the two-way traffic versus the one-way traffic. In a downtown urban area where you have a lot of pedestrians, having two lanes running in the same direction where people are passing each other and jockeying for position and trying to get through as quickly as they can is like, it can be dangerous for pedestrians. And, it promotes higher speeds. People want to, if someone's in front of them, they think they're going too slow, they'll go around them, which doesn't interact well with pedestrian safety. So it's really the two-way traffic versus the one-way couplets is a traffic calming and pedestrian safety measure. And you think about, and the logical flow of traffic, like we've reviewed so if you go, you can't drive around Courthouse Square. You got to go out blocks out of your way, and that some of those movements are, besides being longer trips, they are a negative for visitors who are confused, like how you're visiting somebody who's at the university, and you want to go downtown, and how do you get to different restaurants? And, it can be confusing following those patterns, but the emergency services in Scranton basically said it's also creates longer routes for them to get to emergencies when they have to follow the different traffic patterns around. Having the two-way network, they think will give them the ability to get to things in the downtown area quicker, without the round the extra going around the block.
Do you need more, Jack, or can we vote?
My head's spinning.
And then the thing that I think is going to be like I think perhaps for some residents and property owners, a little bit I don't call it controversial, but a change is putting in the bike lanes. Both the protected bike lanes and just the striped bike lanes.
I think clearly the study makes the case that it is time that Scranton approached some of these issues head-on and in a comprehensive manner. Now, whether or not the conclusions or the implementation follows every detail of those 160 pages, I'll tell you right now, it's unlikely. That's not the bet you want to take. A lot is going to will come out of this, but again, a lot of those details have to be discussed with stakeholders, with people who have concerns, and whatever. I guess what I'm saying is I think that we need to have an opportunity either digitally or virtually, all right, to discuss in an unhurried fashion our response to what we as individuals have read, so that we can then make sure that we're as knowledgeable about this as can be. Because absent that, we can't really be proactive. I mean, that's just the way it is. And Donnie, the one thing I would, because I still do have some doubt in my own mind as to just where we stand with the Sunshine Law, Freedom of Information Act. There was a young attorney, was an assistant from the legal department, was here at one of our meetings.
Yes.
He was very helpful and very knowledgeable. Could you ask him just what is permitted? I mean, I understand this would be a non-voting thing. If we had an educational meeting for all the commissioners on Zoom, it would be to discuss and suggest and respond, but not to vote on anything. I just want to know, is that legal?
And it's a good question, and we'll get the answer to that.
Okay, great. I'm done.
Anything from you, Jim?
I think there is a lot to consider here. I also, though, don't want extended deliberation to delay the process of further study and implementation. So I think we have to balance those two things. Like, so Tom, you mentioned further engineering study.
I don't think that you spending more time to review things is going to slow down the process, because there are all more steps and more study before we have, say, the advancement of concrete projects. But that's all going to happen that's not a matter of years. That's a matter of months.
Right, but I guess the basic concepts in the study and the report could be advanced, right? Even though some of these things still have to be proven out, or the details need to be finalized, and we need to get stakeholder input. However, my feeling is if we are in agreement that these are the concepts that we feel are recommended and appropriate for the city, can we go ahead and recommend that the city take it into consideration for future projects?
I think, obviously, I would absolutely agree with you that no unnecessary delay should be tolerated. But by the same token, I think maybe having one more opportunity for us to discuss this thing directly and in greater detail, I think it's time well spent. And if that resulted in 3 or 4 weeks, I don't think that's going to in any way slow down a process that's going to take significant amount of time, no matter what happens. Yeah. So I would still like to have that, confab where we all talk about this thing.
Sure. I'd add to it, you know, it sounds like Tom's explaining that things are moving along regardless, so.
Things are moving, but as I was explained, the recommendations are being put to the next level of engineering traffic analysis test.
Okay, and that's actively happening now?
Yes.
Or, okay.
You know, and there are streetscape projects that are in the early planning phases, you know, that will need to have answers for them to get much, you know, farther along.
So it sounds like some of these things are proceeding regardless of whether or not there's a recommendation from the plan.
That's right. They don't need us, but at some point, we just want to be on
So
the
it's a
record.
formality.
Well, I think they're generally proceeding, but they're proceeding in the context of further testing whether they work, whether they're, you know, whether, you know, a further.
Right, not in the implementation phase. It's in the
Right, it's
study phase.
further, call it the next level of study of these things, not the, you know, nobody's drawing construction plans based on this. You know, so having any kind of input of, so you have sort of like generally Planning Commission recommends the furtherance of these goals. And then you have then the next level, which is Planning Commission look at, you know, Section A, Section B, Section C, and has a question or concern or a recommendation, you know, which is So the city is going to go forward with the analysis of these recommendations, and before they become any kind of construction plan or permit submission to PennDOT, the city needs your input, you know, and the input of the public.
Okay. I mean, all things considered, I'll make a motion to table any, you know, any formal recommendation or approval of the downtown Scranton connectivity plan. But in the meantime, you know, between now and next meeting, Don, if you can, you know, reach out, help us schedule a meeting with all of the commission members, Tom, anyone from, you know, the administration that would be appropriate to kind of discuss the plan a little bit, you know, as Jack suggested. You could also make sure that you ask Andrew or one of the city solicitors just to confirm that, you know, that wouldn't be a violation of the Sunshine Act.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we did it as a caucus at a pre-meeting, we could advertise it, and we could certainly make sure we don't run afoul of the Sunshine Act, but if we want to do it virtually, I could check on that also.
Yeah, I think
That might even be preferable if it turns out to be acceptable within the Sunshine Law. Because even if you did a caucus and you advertised it, the chances that might not be the best time for public input, all right? I think we need some time to talk about this among ourselves, so that our response and our whatever role we end up playing in this, that it's an informed role, you know?
Well, my purpose of putting it on the agenda is not to try and force the commission into making something that, I want to keep it
alive.
Keep it alive, so
Absolutely,
that this
Don.
report doesn't end up on the back shelf somewhere. And
Absolutely. I'm getting ready to buy my bicycle.
All right. So I made a motion to table it for now, but in the meantime, set up an educational session with the commission members to discuss it. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. So moved.
That's a mess.
Before we adjourn, one suggestion I'm going to make is that we move our next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting, which would fall on the 23rd of August to the following week, the 30th of August. I'm going to, I know Jack and myself are both going to be, as well as Tom Riley, are going to be out of town for the 23rd. So is that all right with you, Jen, Gus?
I may not be able to attend the 30th, but I am definitely not able to attend the 23rd, so.
Okay, so it sounds like 23rd is definitely a no-go, so. How about you, Gus? Push back? Okay, all right. So let's look to, yeah, if that's all right, Jen, we'll move it to the 30th, and hopefully you can join us for that. I don't know if we need a formal motion, but I'll make a motion to move our next meeting from August 23rd to August 30th. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. If there's nothing else, then I will make a motion to adjourn for the evening.
Second.
Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.